As we put together our final thoughts for the full review of the LG G5, we thought we would take a look at it against one of its main competitors, so as to give you guys a taste of what's to come in the full review. It's Joshua Vergara from Android Authority. What's going on, everybody? And this is the LG G5 versus the iPhone 6s. Now, as has been the case leading up to the full review, which is coming in a few days, I will have to tell you that this LG G5 is a pre-production unit, and as such, some of the stuff that you will hear in this versus may change when the full retail unit comes. And even then, we're just going to be taking a look at a general comparison between these two phones. Design is, of course, a mainstay when it comes to an Apple iPhone, and the 6s continues the tradition of having a metal unibody, and yet the 6s looks very much like the original 6. You still get all of the same bits and pieces all around, and if you get the 6s Plus, it is obviously going to have a much larger body. But you still have the home button up front with the silence toggle over in the corner, and it is pretty easy to use in one hand due to its smaller size. But LG was the one that really went for a new design, and this time around it looks radically different from previous phones like the G4 and the G Flex line. This time around the curve is gone, and you have a subtle curve at the top of the phone, which is supposed to make it easier to talk when you are on a call. But the rest of the phone still has maybe just a couple of tropes from previous devices, like the back button, which is just a home button and fingerprint reader now because the volume rocker has been moved back to the side. The main thing you'll see, however, is that there is a dual camera setup on the back, and of course when it comes to the design of this mostly metal phone, you will be able to remove the bottom portion in order to remove the battery and add in new modules. Now, we'll focus on the modules in a little bit, but the main thing here is that at 5.3 inches in that screen, the LG G5 does still manage to be, for the most part, pretty easy to use in one hand. Speaking of that 5.3 inch display, however, it does come in at Quad HD resolution, and it is an IPS display, much like the one that is found on the iPhone 6s. However, it does come in at 1334 by 750 resolution instead, so you're going to have a big drop down in resolution. Still, the colors still look pretty good on both of these devices, even if the smaller size of the iPhone 6s might make you go for the slightly larger one. But of course, you do have the 6s Plus if you really need more real estate for fun and work. And in the age-old battle of Android versus iOS, one of the first places to see the differences is in performance. The Apple A9 rounds out the performance package of the iPhone 6s, powered by PowerVR graphics and 2 GB of RAM. Now, that is to Apple's credit that they only have one main device in order to provide what is needed for the performance package to perform well, but on the other hand, you need to have a lot of power for most flagship devices on Android, and the Snapdragon 820 backed by the Adreno 530 and 4 GB of RAM are what the LG G5 are able to boast. That's not to say that the LG UX 5.0 in this case of the LG G5 isn't able to keep up with what is mostly a smooth experience on the iPhone. On the contrary, the phone is able to really perform quite well thus far, and we don't expect there to be too many changes in the performance and smoothness of the G5 once we get our hands and we do our full review of the retail unit. But it's in hardware that things really tend to get a little bit different here, as the iPhone still has the same unibody design that you would expect. As elegant as it is, many of its parts, pretty much all of them really, are not removable or replaceable. We'll start off with storage, as 16, 32, and 128 GB capacities are available for the iPhone 6s, and you're probably going to have to pay a lot of money in order to get those higher capacities. On the other hand, the 32 GB worth of storage inside of the G5 is user expandable, so a micro SD card is going to help you get all the storage that you need. The fingerprint readers are also a little bit different. In the case of the iPhone, it is made much faster this time around in the 6s, to the point where when you actually hit the home button, it already read your fingerprint and it unlocks immediately. On the other hand, the fingerprint reader on the G5 is a little bit more like the 6P, where you don't necessarily have to hit that button on the back to wake the phone and then it will unlock. You could just have your finger on the back and it will wake and unlock on its own. But of course, the main story here is all about the modular design of the LG G5. Now obviously that means you are able to remove the battery, and as we've shown in a number of demonstrations, there's a small little button on the bottom corner that allows you to remove the whole bottom panel. It's at that point that you can snap off the replaceable battery, put another one in if you need extra power, or you can put that into a number of different modules that will extend the capabilities of the LG G5. Now we are going to review modules like the Cam Plus and also the Hi-Fi Hi-Fi audio panel that is available for the LG G5, but that will be in our full review. For now, however, we will give LG a lot of credit for really taking a push into what might be the future of smartphones by creating a modular design in the G5, and we're excited to see how useful it becomes with our full unit. Speaking of batteries, a 2800 mAh battery in the LG G5 has proven to be pretty good so far, but again, this is our pre-production unit, and things could change when the full retail unit is reviewed, as it is being reviewed right now. The iPhone, on the other hand, has a 1715 mAh battery, and the one thing that we always give credit to Apple for on the iPhone is great standby time. And when you're using it, well, it does have the standard, let's say, iPhone battery life, in the fact that a lot of people tend to ask if there is a plug nearby by the end of the day. It's at this point that we get into the cameras. Now, the first thing we'll say is that the iPhone has a 12 megapixel rear camera, and it does not have OIS. OIS is made just for the 6S Plus camera, and it has no manual controls in the app, which is something you probably knew already. On the other hand, Android has really been trying to put manual controls in a lot of cameras, and the G5 is no exception. You have a 16 megapixel rear camera and the full manual Pro mode controls that are available, but the main addition in the G5 is a great wide-angle 135-degree 8 megapixel camera that proves to be incredibly fun. Now, we're not going to pixel peep a whole lot here, obviously because we don't have the full retail unit for this particular comparison, but we wanted to give you guys a number of examples between these two phones of their camera quality, and you can pretty much judge for yourself. It'll give you an idea of what the LG G5 will be able to provide once you get your hands on a full retail unit. But ultimately, we wanted to just highlight the fact that the wide-angle camera is really fun to use, and it has a wide angle so that even if you don't want to use the front-facing camera, the 8 megapixel front-facing camera of the G5, you can just turn the phone around and you don't have to worry about getting anything in your shot because it will all be captured. So it's obviously going to be a bit of a change for any Android user to use the G5 when it doesn't have the app drawer. But at the very least, it will be made available, as LG has said over the last few days, as a download that you can put onto the phone if you really do need the app drawer back. That said, however, the LG UX 5.0 still has quite a few of the different quirks and the different features that make it the LG UI, including the Q-Slide applications, which originally we thought would have gone by the wayside because they're not in the notification dropdown, but in reality, they're actually just a bit hidden. Normally it would be a bit of a no-brainer, but now that the app drawer is not necessarily in the LG UX, unless you put it in there, we will focus on the fact that Android still remains one of the most customizable OSs out there. And not to say that iOS 9 doesn't look that great, it just matters how you want things to look on whichever phone you end up choosing. A main addition in the software of the LG G5 has to do with the display, the always-on display, which is a nice way of getting a quick look at what notifications you have, along with the time and date, without having to unlock the phone. It's not a bad way of leveraging a feature of the display on the G5, which is a little bit like 3D Touch does on the iPhone 6s. And speaking of 3D Touch, it is a new layer onto the software that leverages the pressure sensitivity of the display, which is really nice. When you press hard enough on an icon, you will get extra shortcuts so you don't have to actually go through the application to do certain tasks, and then it will unlock a few extra capabilities in other parts of the OS. Ultimately, 3D Touch is not necessarily a killer feature of the iPhone, and it's a feature that, while we think is good, if it wasn't there, we probably wouldn't miss it a whole lot. The LG G5 is available now, but make sure you catch our full review so you can see whether it is the phone that you want to have among all the flagships this year. It is going to be available for the regular price for flagships, especially with carriers, but you will be able to get bundles with different LG friends or modules like the Cam Plus, so that might sweeten the pot a little bit more. The iPhone, on the other hand, is still available across all major carriers for the main prices, but if you're going to get it unlocked, it does carry a pretty penny, especially for the larger capacities. So that should do it for this quick look at the LG G5 and the Apple iPhone. Again, we do have the G5 pre-production unit for this particular video, but our full review will give you more details on how we feel about the phone and its various features, including the modules. The iPhone 6s, on the other hand, is of course going to be one of those phones that we compare them to, and if you want a closer look at them, we will do a camera shootout between these two and other Android phones in the market as well. So stay tuned for that and our full review of the LG G5 coming very soon, and you can stay tuned here and see that by subscribing to our channel. Until then, make sure you stay tuned because we are your source for all things Android.